Have you ever wanted to or known you should say no, but you feel physically uncomfortable to do it? Your chest tightens, your thoughts start racing, and somehow you end up saying yes, even if you wanted to say no because you don't want to do it. Or maybe you avoid conflict altogether, even if it means sacrificing your own needs. If that sounds familiar, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were never taught boundaries in the first place. So setting boundaries actually feels unsafe and uncomfortable for you, even though the whole purpose of boundaries is the exact opposite. Hello, friends, and welcome back to my channel here at True Reality Life, where we talk about the true realities of the life around us, beautiful, ugly, and everything in between. My name is Amber, your mental health and wellness mentor, and today we're going to talk about what exactly boundaries are, why they feel so hard to set, where that struggle comes from, and just a brief start of how to set boundaries today as an adult. In the last episode, we talked about why self love is so hard for some people, especially if you grew up in environments that involved criticism and judgment, where your emotions didn't feel safe. And the truth is, if you struggle with self love, you probably struggle setting boundaries too. Because if you don't feel worthy of love or respect, it's very hard for you to believe that you're allowed to have limits. So let's start off by diving into exactly what is a boundary. We hear about boundaries all of the time these days, but what exactly is a personal boundary? A boundary is the line between comfort and discomfort internally. It's about setting a limit before you get uncomfortable in a situation. And this is not about trying to control other people's behavior. It's about honoring what makes you feel safe and comfortable and at peace in the situation that you're in. It's the exact point where you stop abandoning yourself and stop sacrificing your own comfort for other people's comfort. And you may mentally think of a boundary that you could set in place, but it's all about communicating what feels okay versus what doesn't, and giving yourself permission to honor that line that you've set. It's all about protecting your emotional safety, honoring your own needs, and communicating what you will and won't accept from others. So, what can this sound like? Some examples are: I'm not available for that right now. No, that's not okay for me. Or, I need to take a minute for myself. The main focus is to stay connected with yourself and tune in with how you feel in every situation. But I want you to keep in mind, this is about you. Communicate your needs and your boundaries, but you cannot control anybody else's response to them. People may try to convince you by peer pressuring you or getting defensive to the point that you feel uncomfortable and feel obligated to give in and people please what they're wanting. Or, worst case scenario, somebody may try to force you physically to do something that you do not feel comfortable doing. But I want you to honor your boundaries. Stand up for yourself. And if you have to, remove yourself completely from an uncomfortable or unsafe environment. But always remember, if you feel like you're in a physical danger from somebody, always call 911. Please do not find yourself in a situation where you feel stuck or alone, like you don't have somebody to call for help, because you do. And unfortunately, in today's society, not a lot of people are educated about boundaries. It's never been a focal point of education growing up as children, and we'll get into that a little later. So, not everybody will respect your boundaries, and it may sound a little uncomfortable to other people. So, that's when they might start getting reactive or not respecting the boundaries that you've set. But I applaud you for being here today and being part of the solution towards education about boundaries so that we can further instill it in the future generations to come, so that boundaries become a normal part of society. where we can set them for our personal needs and also respect them from other people. And I want you to remember that even as we begin to educate our future generations, and it is becoming more common to teach our children boundaries, I want you to recognize it is not too late for you to start practicing setting your own boundaries. The more that you practice and understand them, is the more you'll be able to teach them to other people and the children around you. Next, I want to talk about why you weren't taught how to set boundaries. Because not everybody grew up in an environment where boundaries were even allowed. You may have been punished for expressing your own needs, or told you're too emotional or too sensitive, which isn't that kind of how children are supposed to be when we're not aware of how to regulate our own emotions that are coming up for us? Or maybe you were expected to keep the peace at all cost, even if that meant sacrificing your own safety and comfortability. Or you probably were made responsible for other people's emotions and how they reacted to different situations. I know a common saying growing up was, "Stop crying before I give you something to cry about," because our emotions as children were an inconvenience to the adults around us. So we were told to stop crying or go deal with it somewhere else so that they didn't have to deal with our emotions. We were made to seem at fault for having feelings. So instead of learning that I'm allowed to have needs and emotions, it probably felt safer to just stay quiet to keep the peace. And this is not about trying to blame our parents or even grandparents for this, because they were doing and teaching us exactly what they were taught or exposed to. We have to realize that the generations that raised us, they grew up in a different environment and time period that held different beliefs and expectations of the people around them. So many of our grandparents, or maybe even parents, depending of what age you are, women were not allowed to openly express their emotions or feelings or needs. And that was passed down onto the children. Everybody was expected to just be seen and not heard. You were supposed to be the pleasant family who put on this image of being perfect and put together all of the time. Men were expected to be viewed as strong, hardworking people, and emotions were viewed as weak. So, for all three, men, women, and children, emotions were not openly talked about. Setting boundaries was the last thing that was on the table. There were expectations, and that was it. There was such a strong focus on obedience and often putting others before yourself in order to people please and keep the peace. So, at the time, boundaries weren't just not taught, they were highly discouraged. It was all about do what I say without a question, follow direction, whether it was in the workforce for men or in the home life for women. Do what I say. And if it was your grandparents who grew up in that time frame, they passed that right on down to their children. So children weren't exposed to anything else. And it wasn't until recent times that there started being more research on emotional needs and mental health and wellness, that boundaries started being more openly discussed and accepted. Today, we're starting to realize the importance of emotional awareness, open communication, and practicing the ability to express our needs in a healthy way. We as a society are learning to embrace the humanness of emotions, that it is a natural response from our nervous system to have emotions and reactions to things that people may not have been so aware of at the time. So, we have the wonderful privilege of teaching future generations how to regulate their emotions, communicate their needs, and set boundaries. But I want you to think about, as a kid growing up, if you had feelings like every single human being has, did you feel safe expressing your emotions? Or did you feel more comfortable shutting down your feelings and learning to minimize yourself in order to avoid conflict? If you often go towards sacrificing your own needs and putting other people above you, here's how the lack of setting boundaries may show up in your life today as an adult. You may have a fear of conflict or feel the need to over explain yourself. You tend to people please more often than not and feel responsible for how others feel. And the biggest one, you may have difficulty saying no. And this is because you probably feel emotionally overwhelmed. You have never been allowed to feel all your feelings openly, honestly, without feeling the need to cover them up, because that's what you've been taught your whole life, to cover up your feelings for the convenience of everybody else. Without boundaries, everything comes flooding in all at once. So you're feeling all of the feelings, then you're taking in all of your surroundings around you, and it becomes overwhelming because there's no limit there. It's just an influx of everything. It's very overstimulating. So we have to learn to set a boundary, set a limit to what we allow and don't allow, to what we can handle and what makes us feel comfortable. So I want you to think about the next time you have the opportunity to say yes or no to a situation. Somebody may be asking you to do something. And even if your first instinct is to say yes, and even if you happen to say yes in the moment, because this is all a practice, I want you to take a moment to think about, did you really mean to say no? And there's no shame in changing your answer in order to make you feel more comfortable. You are not responsible for upsetting somebody else. If they get upset because of something that you did, that is something they need to work through. I want to touch on the science behind the feelings that we experience when we try to set a boundary. What is happening in our body, in our nervous system, whenever we feel anxious about saying no to somebody, about communicating our own needs to somebody else. Setting a boundary may not just feel uncomfortable for you, but it feels unsafe to your nervous system. You start getting anxious about saying no, about communicating your needs, because it's a new experience for you. Because in past experiences that you've had feelings or emotions, thoughts, and opinions, they've been shut down. They've been met with criticism or defensiveness, or overall just not a positive response. So your body learned at a very young age, hey, this is not safe. If I express my feelings, I am met with an unsafe environment. Somebody may yell at me, I may be abandoned, I may be shunned, made to feel ashamed. So your nervous system says, the next time that we have feelings or want to set boundaries or communicate our needs, we're just not going to do that so that we can avoid those feelings of judgment and shame altogether. We're just going to avoid it, keep ourselves safe, stay over here while those feelings stay over there. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, whenever your nervous system is activated with your stress response, cortisol, and adrenaline, it shuts off your ability to critically think. So you're not in the moment to be thinking, oh, how should I respond best to this situation? What was I supposed to be practicing right now to set these boundaries, to do this, to do that? Your body takes over. Your body is in autopilot trying to keep you safe, trying to make sure that you do not feel those horrible feelings of shame, guilt, judgment, criticism, all of the things that people have made you feel in the past for expressing your needs. So we have to start being hyper aware of situations where these feelings start to come out before we let our body go on autopilot. We have to start setting boundaries in small ways in order to create safety in our environment, to reassure ourselves that we are safe and we are stronger than the judgment that we may face for having limits, for having boundaries, that we are valued and worthy of receiving respect from other people. And if they cannot give that to us, that is not our fault. That is something somebody else needs to deal with within their own life, within their own mental health journey. That is not on you. The only thing you can control is how you respond and how you communicate your needs. That's it. But that takes some work to rewire our nervous system. Because right now, your nervous system is probably associating conflict with danger, or disappointing others with rejection, or maybe that if you speak up, you will be punished because you have in the past. So when you try to set a boundary, your body may respond with anxiety or panic, or it may shut down, or it may default to people pleasing, putting somebody else's needs over your own. And this is not because you are doing anything wrong. It's because your body is just trying to protect you based off of past experiences that you grew up with. And it takes a conscious effort to rewire your nervous system by reassuring yourself that you are worthy of respect and worthy of setting boundaries for yourself. And I want you to tune in with yourself right now. Do you feel anxious at the thought of setting boundaries with people, especially people who may have not responded very kindly to you in the past? I know it makes me anxious. This is something I'm working on. So, how do you start setting boundaries as an adult, even when it feels uncomfortable? And the truth is, it won't feel natural at first. It'll make you feel anxious and uncomfortable, and it may feel scary or like you're doing something wrong, especially if you feel unworthy. And this is where the self love component that we talked about in our last episode comes in. You learn to love yourself and grow that respect and trust for yourself enough to be able to set a boundary with somebody else. That you are protecting yourself and your safety from other people disturbing your comfort. But at first, you may be questioning, who am I to even be setting standards in this situation? Who am I to be setting boundaries or telling somebody else what I feel comfortable with? And that's because we as children were taught to lessen ourselves in order to make other people feel comfortable. And we never outgrew this belief. So we're still functioning at the level of a child because we haven't been educated, we haven't matured in the ability to set boundaries in our emotional intelligence. If you dropped out of school in the third grade, where you may be learning to do reading and math, I don't know what they learn in elementary schools these days, but where you didn't learn something, unless you put in the effort later in life, you're still going to be at that third grade level education for the rest of your life. You're never going to learn how to read or write or do the math or work on your emotional intelligence or learn to set boundaries because you're still at the intellect of whatever age you were learning emotions weren't safe. And I'm so proud of you for being here today because it shows that you're willing to put in the work now, recognizing that there maybe is a flaw that you need to fix in order for you to feel more mentally safe, emotionally safe in the environments around you, that your comfortability and peace is worth protecting. But I want you to realize the feelings that come up for you at first as you're trying to practice boundaries, there's nothing wrong with that. Your body and your nervous system is not used to or comfortable with setting boundaries yet. So it's going to take practice in order to be more comfortable with it. Just like public speaking for me, it's very uncomfortable for me at first, and I hate public speaking, but I love it at the same time because I love being able to help people like you. So with practice, I will get more comfortable. But at first, it's going to bring up all those scary emotions because my body is just not used to it. It's worried about the worst case scenario. And we have to reassure ourselves, hey, I'm not in danger. I am okay. And I will get through this. But realize you do not have to change overnight. This just takes small steps towards setting boundaries. For example, I want you to start pausing before you immediately say yes to somebody. Think about, how will I feel once I go home? Will I sit here and be like, man, I shouldn't have agreed to that. I shouldn't have said yes to that job that they offered me, whatever it may be. Just take a minute to pause, give yourself 30 seconds to a minute to really think about your answer before immediately saying yes. Am I just saying yes in order to people please, or is it genuinely because I want to say yes? This means giving yourself the time to respond. Don't feel rushed or pressured by somebody else's impatience. You are entitled to take your time to respond. Maybe practice saying, "Let me get back to you," if you don't know for sure how you feel about saying yes or no in the moment. And there is nothing wrong with that. Mm. By giving yourself this time, it allows you to tune in with yourself and recognize what feelings are coming up for you. Do you feel comfortable in this situation that you're agreeing to, or is it more uncomfortable and you should probably say no? And these small steps are what builds awareness, and awareness is the first step to change. So the next time that you're faced with a decision, I want you to take a minute and realize what feelings are coming up for me right now, and what are my needs in this situation. So even if you do say yes, but and state your standards, state your boundaries, your limitations. What would make you feel more comfortable in the situation that you're agreeing to? Even in relationships. Yes, I'll go with you, but you can't be on your phone the whole time. Yes, I'll date you, but you can't still talk to your ex. Whatever it may be, there's so many different scenarios that this applies to. And as we've touched on, boundaries are a form of self respect. And it may feel selfish at first, but that's because that's what you were taught growing up. That if you put your own needs above somebody else's, that's selfish. Yet, isn't that exactly what our parents or our grandparents were doing to us by saying that our needs were lesser than theirs? Boundaries are intended to teach other people how to treat you, to communicate what you will and won't accept from people or situations, and overall, how to have a healthy relationship with you where you can feel comfortable and always be open to them communicating their boundaries so that you can make them feel comfortable. Wouldn't that be the ideal situation where you're both together and you both feel comfortable because you voiced your concerns and your limitations of what you accept versus don't accept? Because without boundaries, we lose ourselves by trying to make other people feel comfortable. And just remember what we touched on before, you cannot control people's response to you setting boundaries. I know it may feel triggering if somebody responds maybe similar to the way that your parents did for you having emotions. They get reactive and defensive and say you're being dumb or over dramatic, but I promise you, you're not. You are allowed to set boundaries for yourself. You are allowed to protect your inner peace. Other people's reactions are their issue to handle. That's something they need to work on within their own mental health journey. That is not on you. Stop taking responsibilities for other people's emotions and reactions to things. You wouldn't take responsibility for somebody else's unhealthy lifestyle, like them eating junk food or sugary foods and gaining weight. So, why are you taking responsibility for their unhealthy mental health? That's on them. That's their active choice to not put in the work, to not be mentally aware and healthy. You are only responsible for you. And you are doing the right thing by being here today in order to learn and grow about setting boundaries for yourself. But as always, I want to take a little turn and give a little faith based connection here. So if you have a relationship with God, I appreciate you being here. God appreciates you being here and taking that effort to grow closer to who you were intended to be in His eyes. So I want you to think about in the Bible, throughout Scripture, Jesus often withdraws from the mass of crowds in order to rest and to pray. This teaches us that rest, peace, and intentional separation is necessary. Setting boundaries is necessary. Remember that taking time for yourself, protecting your peace, and creating space is not selfish, but it's necessary for mental clarity and connection with God. You cannot show up for God and pray and be fully present if you are worried about all these insecurities and how other people are going to judge you. Because there's only one opinion that matters, and that is God's. So remember that. You have to set boundaries for yourself in order to show up fully and openly to God in your prayer, in your time alone. And you cannot do that without setting boundaries for yourself with other people. But sometimes the hardest boundaries are not the ones we set with other people, but actually boundaries that we have to set within ourselves. It's recognizing the internal conflict between what you know is healthy versus how your body actually responds. The fight between your heart wanting peace, your mind racing and overthinking, and your nervous system reacting automatically. And this is all happening within you, internally, all at once. So, next episode, I want to talk about how to set boundaries within yourself, especially when your nervous system is trying to take over. Sometimes it's not just about saying no to other people, but saying no to the overthinking, your people pleasing urges, or patterns that no longer serve you. If today's episode resonated with you, make sure to share it with somebody else for them to hear it too. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Love you so much. Bye.